5-minute review, just a bite-sized chunk to help you understand what the game is and whether you might like it or not. Hashtag no spoilers. Darkest Dungeon is a 2D dungeon crawler. You wander around dungeons on a 3D overhead map, and each dungeon is created randomly to keep the adventure fresh. Battling the darkness is your main foe. Keep the torches burning as you fight your way against the odds to victory. The main selling point of this game is its mental meter, which showcases your character's mental well-being as they see their friends getting vomited on, yelled at by fish people, and this dick who keeps spilling his drink on you. These things all grind on your character to the point of their demise, where they start spreading the bad morale to teammates, hurt themselves, skip their turns, and in general just give out bad vibes. The game can be tough though, and works on a permadeath basis. If your guy dies, you lose all that experience. And the good times you had together. RIP Gary Two Shoes. This can be frustrating, but also makes the decisions of one more room in the dungeon all that more tricky. The other half of the game is spent in town, trying to trick your party into going back into the dungeons. Plenty of rest as your characters enjoy their favourite pastimes before they're cast out into the darkness. Each character, as he goes through hell, develops good and bad quirks. Things like becoming an alcoholic, and he will only be able to rest at the bar. That's all well and good until half your team become alcoholics, and the caretaker here, Sammy Takes His Time, was blocking the bar for 2 weeks. Literally had to restart the game. I really love the style in this game. It's dark, moody, and visceral. It really sets the tone of the game, and your whole adventure is narrated by this guy as well.
An unnameable power. Press this advantage. Give them no quarter. And what better place to begin than the seat of our noble line?
Which is a complete game changer and just makes the game that much more awesome. Darkest Dungeon is a dungeon crawler, and at the heart of every good dungeon crawler, there's never ever a good story. So I wouldn't play this for the story, but it's got a generic storyline of a relative has sent you a letter and you must go and vanquish the foe and restore your family name. The thing I do sort of like is if you rename your characters and you think about the characters that usually fight together and things like that, I always like to come up with little story bits thinking that, you know, certain characters will like protect each other, and you know, if a certain character died and stuff like that. And I think that makes the game interesting, but also you can find little hidden notes and things throughout the game that give you little glimpses into your relative's life. The combat in the game is pretty unique. As well as being turn-based and having no timer so you can think about what you're doing, it uses positioning. So if you have a character at the back of your line, they'll use ranged attacks, so they might be only able to hit the back 2 enemies on their side, while your swordsman can only hit the front 2 enemies with his sword. So it's really important how you structure your team, and the enemy has moves to break your formation, so they can send your swordsman to the back where he can't attack, or pull your ranged units from the back to the front to make them more vulnerable. But also you can do the same. So if there's a big guy at the front with lots of health and lots of defense, you can send him to the back, and then that lets you get at the squishier enemies behind, which do more damage. When this becomes important is when you get to the bigger dungeons and it becomes a battle of attrition. So you might have more health, but your mind is weak, so you have to get rid of the scary monsters first, or vice versa, and you want to get rid of the strong monsters first with a high defense. You really have to think about what you're doing, and the combat is so detailed in that way and so important. There's so much content in this game with lots of different classes, and each class has multiple ways to be played with additional abilities you can swap out for close combat or more range. So say your Crusader is close combat, but you can also make him a healer, and your healer you can also give him poison abilities. A game it's like is Diablo 3. Obviously the combat is very different, but if you like to crunch those stats and fight oversized beasts, then they're similar for those. And they both have that permadeath feature, which I think completely changes Diablo 3. Darkest Dungeon is a really fun, atmospheric game. It's tough and frustrating, but if you're into that, you'll really enjoy it. It's rewarding getting out of tough dungeons or completing horrible bosses. There's probably about 60 hours of gameplay depending on how good you're at it, and a little bit of luck. But there really is so much content in here. With every bit of the town having multiple upgrades, different classes, there's different weapons, trinkets and abilities, the game's a solid 4 out of 5 for anyone who loves a good dungeon crawl. The only thing is there's no multiplayer. For a dungeon crawler, that's really good fun. So if you've got mates that like dungeon crawling, Diablo 3 is probably the game for you, and if you don't, Darkest Dungeon.